All right. Welcome into the BuffStampede Basketball Podcast. I am Jake Shapiro. We've got Chase Howell and Vinay Simlot with me. Been a week since we talked to you, and in that week, we all had Thanksgiving. But more importantly, most importantly, the Colorado Buffaloes on the basketball court got 2 wins, and they are back in action. They're fighting some COVID troubles right now because it's 2020 and nothing can be just good all around. There needs to be some sort of negative attached to your positive, but it was a good trip to Kansas for the boys. They fought through some real bad COVID issues with the guys on their court. They faced some adversity with what was actually going on in the games. And then their game, which would have been on Wednesday, was canceled. And now they're still playing tomorrow on Saturday against Washington State. So if anyone wants to just recap where we are at in this whirlwind of a basketball season already, because me, the beat writer for BuffStampede, is just completely lost already. I am having trouble seeing the forest through the trees because I am just looking at one tree at a time.
Well, I haven't gotten to hear you do play-by-play in a while, so I can't stop thinking about Colorado Buffaloes. But yeah, I guess I'll try to recap the first 2 games a little bit. First one didn't really have much of note happen in that game besides McKinley Wright is just really good at basketball. He had 19 points, what felt like in the first half, or close to it, and then he didn't do too much in the second half, but he didn't need to. Second game was definitely a little bit more interesting. They struggled out of the gate. It was a little bit scary for a bit. I wasn't the CU Buffs team that we were used to. We thought it might be.
And when you say scary for a bit, you mean that you had the Buffs covering, so it was scary for you.
Wow, you know I'm ethical.
He doesn't bet on.
I don't bet on you. I don't know what you're talking about.
I had a lot of text messages from people saying I thought you said pound the cover at half, and I was like, just wait.
Yeah, just wait. Just have some patience. Because anybody that had the Buffs in that first half was definitely pretty worried. But they figured it out. McKinley Wright became McKinley Wright, and that just seems to be the story of the first 2 games.
Yeah, same thing for me. I loved Jariah Horn. I think he can be a good contributor for the Buffs. And I was just really impressed with the young guys that got a chance to play.
Jabari Walker.
Yeah, Jabari Walker was outstanding, I thought. A hustle player.
Yeah, we're 5 minutes into this podcast and we haven't mentioned his name. That's too late because he was really good in those first 2 games.
So I'll take off from there. Jabari Walker is already someone that I love. He is somebody to me that looks like a combination of Xavier Johnson in a positive way. Xavier Johnson was a 1,000-point scorer at Colorado. He's a hell of a wing player for the Buffaloes. Of course, the last parts of his career and maybe some of the off-the-court stuff wasn't the best, but early on in his career, Xavier Johnson looked like he was going to be a terrific player for Colorado, and that's what Jabari Walker reminds me of is the early on Xavier Johnson that just got you all that hype and feeling inside. But Walker looks like he can pound the boards even maybe a little bit better than Johnson, and people forget that Johnson was a really good rebounder. He seems to fit that perfect power forward role in college, which actually ends up being a small forward in the NBA, which is this kind of combination between a guard, forward, big. And Walker seems to be able to do all those things. And boy, I'm just so excited for the future of him because he had this one cut. And it seems weird to be the guy that's like, oh my God, he had this one cut. It showed everything, but I'm that guy right now. Evan Batty was on a post up off the strong side, far side of the formation on the block. And Walker cut in from the 3-point line because he saw his man just look towards, the strong side of the court, which is a very normal thing for a defender to do. As soon as Walker saw that, he cut. Batty, as I've been saying for years, is a great post passer, found him and one play at the rim with a layup with the left hand. And I'm just like, holy shit. Like the basketball IQ from both of those guys there, you knew Evan had it. Like Evan's a great dude, smart dude. But just from a true freshman in his second game, I'm like, all right, now when you talk about the son of an NBA player, that's what you mean. The IQ is there Tad Boyle's talked about it in terms of like what he can do and his awareness. And it's not a matter of if, but when Jabari Walker's going to be a great player. He already's like a good player is what Tad's saying. So Tad's going to tell you how it is. He always is. And the fact that after 2 college games, Jabari Walker in Tad Boyle's mind is like, yeah, that's going to be a great player at the University of Colorado. Holy shit. Like, I'm like, let's get the Jabari Walker hype train going. Like, let's go.
I honestly get goosebumps with you talking about him. And it does sound weird to call out a cut, but it's that basketball IQ thing. It's something that we don't see from a lot of true freshmen, especially at Colorado, because they're not asked to play very big roles, maybe outside of like a McKinley Wright or Tyler Bay a few years ago. But yeah, he seems to have everything you want in a forward. He's able to rebound. He's been ferocious on the offensive glass. I don't know what his offensive rebound numbers are, but it just seems like he's been pulling a few big ones down. And then, like you said, he's just been really smart. And I like everything about him. We haven't seen him shoot the ball great yet. I think he did a little bit in the opener, but that will come along. He has very nice stroke. I always thought that even when they were recruiting him. And yeah, there's really nothing I don't like about Jabari Walker.
He's the perfect size too. He's 6'8", whatever. He brings a ton of energy. So, Tad Boyle said he had some stuff to clean up in terms of positional stuff and just freshman stuff. I don't have anything negative to say after 2 games in his freshman career. So that, I think that was the number 1 positive of the trip to Manhattan. The number 2 being McKinley Wright seems to have taken that step from going from really good, great player to, all right, this might be the best point guard in the country, especially after looking at other point guards that he's compared to in the country for the last 2 weeks.
Remy Martin.
Remy Martin. McKinley seems to just be at a phenomenal level right now. You talk about that first game. It was really fun to watch because McKinley took over in the first half. Game was over. He just sat back in the second half and Keyshawn Bartholomew ran CU's offense. And it was nice. There wasn't really that much of a level off. It was South Dakota, but the Buffs still won the second half with Keyshawn Bartholomew generally playing the point guard. So that was cool to see. I liked what I saw out of Keyshawn Bartholomew. He, like I said, is really good on the fast break. He made this one bounce pass to Eli Parquet for a pull-up 3 off the left side on a wing. That was a beautiful pass. Great awareness of the trailers and what was going on in front of him on the fast break. Eventually that's going to come in the half court for Bartholomew as well, but that was just great to see because it's some of the stuff we talked about. But the second game, then McKinley Wright follows up with the Buffs down, literally punched in the mouth, like I wrote on BuffStampede, comes back and just leads an unbelievable comeback for the Buffaloes. I guess it shouldn't be unbelievable. The Buffs have done that, I think, 15 times under McKinley, come back from down a dozen. But that's just not normal. And Kin does absolutely everything in that game: rebound, assists, steals, shoots well. And he looked like legitimately one of the top 3 players in the country. Like, I've watched college basketball almost nonstop in my apartment for the last 2 weeks because there's not any other sports going on besides soccer. And I have yet to see a better 2-game performance than the 2 games out of McKinley Wright.
Go ahead, Chase.
Such a sense of comfort when you have a guy like that. And we've seen him make those double-digit comebacks before that. When you do get down double digits in the first half, you're not too worried because you know that if McKinley gets going, this game's going to change.
And to me, the second game against Kansas State, I never really felt like the Buffs were down or were out of it because you get the sense whenever McKinley Wright's on the floor that he's just going to take over, that when he decides to turn it on, he's going to make a big run for the Buffs and take over the game. And he did with 24 points in that game. My issue, though, is that when Keyshawn Bartholomew was out against Kansas State, there was no one that could run the offense with McKinley off the floor. And they really looked lethargic when McKinley Wright wasn't there playing. And if Keyshawn Bartholomew is out for an extended period of time, that's going to be a problem for them.
He was out due to COVID tracing.
Yeah.
We don't even know if he tested positive. But you're right. Like, the Buffs don't have a backup point guard if it's not Keyshawn Bartholomew. It's Keyshawn or bust. And we saw even Maddox Daniels running the point at one point for about 3 possessions for the Buffaloes.
No bueno.
That was not good. I like him as a shooter. I like him as, you know what? I actually like some of the stuff he's brought defensively.
Yeah.
I thought that, yeah, defensively he looks much improved. And when Tad Boyle talks about improvements and hustle and all this, jargon that he was throwing out in the preseason, that's what he's talking about. Daniels does look improved defensively. The issue is he's out there to shoot, and I can't have my shooter going 3 for 15 on the trip or whatever he did from 3-point land. It was pretty bad. And part of that is the decision making. Like, this is why he's not playing point guard. He's not a great decision maker. He is jacking up shots that he probably should not take sometimes. And I think just generally, when some of the younger guys step up and the bigs kind of get comfortable, which we're going to talk about in a second, and when Deshaun Schwartz is there, there's going to be less shots to go around, meaning Maddox Daniels is not going to have this plethora of options when it comes to shots. He's going to be limited to catch and shoots. And that's only going to benefit both Maddox Daniels and the Buffaloes.
Yeah, that's the thing. And you watch a team like Kentucky the other night, and they can't hit a three to save their life. But it's mostly a bunch of young guys that really don't understand shot selection right now. And when you put a senior out there, you'd expect him to have a little bit of a better idea of what is a good shot and what is a bad shot. And it just didn't seem like in those first two games that Maddox understands what's a good shot and what's a bad shot. And like a guy like Shane Gatling last year, when he was hot, he would shoot those types of shots. He would put up the ones that you don't really want him to, but he would end up making them. But when he was cold, he would just completely disappear. And sometimes that's okay. You don't have to force it. Just let the shots come to you, and you're going to start making them. Maddox is a good enough shooter that he's going to start making them eventually.
Stan Van Gundy's analysis of heat checks is hilarious, by the way, if you ever heard it, where it's just like, you're a shooter. You've been taking good shots, so you got hot. So you're going to take a bad one? What's that? Go ahead, Vinay.
Yeah. Well, they say that the only way to get out of being get out of a shooting slump is to keep shooting. So I don't know. Maybe he was trying to get out of that by shooting. But also, to your point, Jake, he's had to carry a lot of that 3-point shooting load for Colorado with Deshaun Schwartz out. And Jariah Horn has stepped up to be a good 3-point shooter too. So maybe that'll take a little pressure off of him, and we'll see how that goes. But overall, I don't think Maddox had a bad two-game set over in Kansas State, in Manhattan.
While I'm talking, where would you guys rank, just put with your fingers up, Deshaun Schwartz, where he is in terms of best player at Colorado? Because for them to be missing him, put your fingers up. For me, it's number 2. So you're 3. Chase, what are you? 3.
Like
okay.
2.5. I don't know.
Okay. So my point is the Buffaloes were missing either their second or third best player on this trip, and it was barely noticeable. That depth is unbelievable. We don't even really know what Jabari Walker and Deshaun and what Jariah Horn's roles are going to be and what they actually look like in the rotation, or even Maddox Daniels, because he's probably going to be coming off the bench. So for the Buffaloes to go in there and cover and win very, very well and with a very positive reaction in both of those games, I think says a lot, because they were missing their second to third best player. And in that first game, they did not know that until about 3 to 4 hours before tip off. So overall, there's not much negatives I have from the trip. And the fact, again, that they did this without Deshaun Schwartz is a real positive for both that trip. And I think going forward, especially given some of the COVID issues that have happened this week, which we're going to cover in a second, I do want to make one more note before we get on from this trip, is both Evan Badney and Dallas Walton had kind of an up and down first 2 games. Walton looks really good. He looks like he's scoring the ball well. He seems to be confident when he's on the floor. He's getting into foul issues. Evan Baddy's having some foul issues as always. And he just didn't generally have 2 good games. I think that's going to be the constant worry of this season, is those 2 being on the bench in foul trouble, or one having a bad game, because that's going to completely sink the Buffaloes if that's happening.
Well, I thought Dallas struggled a little bit in the second game. He didn't look like the Dallas Walton we're used to seeing. And maybe that's just because of what was going on with the rest of the game, but I didn't really think that he took over down low like he did against, maybe I'm remembering his Arizona game from 2 years ago, but that's what I expect to see from Dallas when I'll be like, okay, he's fully recovered, he's ready to go. And I just didn't see that from him.
Yeah, he hit some of those shots against South Dakota, but Kansas State definitely seemed to stifle him a little bit. And it might just be what Kansas State was offering defensively. Kansas State obviously has better big men than a team like South Dakota is going to. I'm less worried about him than I am about Evan Batty, because Dallas Walton can play a defensive and rebounding role. We don't need him to score the basketball. But Evan Batty, on the other hand, he's going to have to help offensively, and it just didn't seem like he was himself. Is anybody worried that maybe he's a better player with fans? Is that going to be something we're going to be talking about throughout this season? Because he does love to feed off the crowd.
You know, the only guy I asked about fans in the preseason was Evan Batty. I guess I asked Evan and Dallas because it was the same day. But yeah, I'm a little worried actually about that. I didn't think of it that way, but
I mean, he brings that intensity in practice too. So I don't know. Yeah. Maybe it is, but I think with Evan, you'll see him start to progress once he gels with the team, because Evan is a guy that really does feed off of his teammates, and he's missing the people he knows, right? He's missing Lucas Seward. He's missing Deshaun Schwartz. He's missing who was it?
Keyshawn Bartholomew, and then they were missing one other guy.
De
Silva, yeah.
Yeah, but the point I'm making is from last year to this year, I don't know if this team has had the time to gel yet.
And Batty's one of the guys that's role has changed the most significantly out of everybody's. But yeah, another guy, and Chase and I were really happy to see him, was Luke O'Brien play. He looked good for some stretches of the second game. And Neek Clifford, whatever he's going by now. Dominique, I'm always going to call him Dominique.
You're thinking of Dom Collier.
Yeah.
Right. That's going to really screw with me now. Neek Clifford looked very solid. Neek Collier. But like overall, just a lot of the depth stepping up, a lot of the young guys. Like I was getting texts from a couple boosters during the trip, and it was just like, this isn't even the good recruiting class of the two we have coming in. Holy shit, Tad's going to be loaded for years. And then I'm starting to get texts like Sweet 16 this year, ? Like it was nonstop hype, those two games. Like it was nonstop hype. I'm really disappointed that Arizona game didn't happen, because I wanted to catch Arizona early, and it would have sucked though without Deshaun, and it wouldn't have been a true test. But I kind of look at it like this. This happens all the time in the NHL, as Chase will tell you. You go on a back-to-back to face a really, really good team on the road. Like let's say it was the Avs and they had to face, the Stars, who they just lost to in the playoffs, but they were facing, the Jets at home tonight. And then they played the Stars tomorrow in Dallas tomorrow. And the Avs will just be like, well, this is a tough situation for us. Let's just throw our backup goalie in there. If we win, we say we won on the road on a back-to-back with our backup goalie. If we lost, it was our backup goalie on a back-to-back. Like, who cares? That's how I felt about that Arizona game, Chase,
Yeah, I think, I was impressed with a couple of the true freshmen. I think a couple of them were swimming a little bit, but we've mentioned it a lot in preseason. These guys didn't get to practice as much as freshmen normally get to. That they weren't going to be as comfortable with this team as we might be used to with some freshmen. De Silva played a lot in that first game. He looked a little bit lost. I think Neek did similar things in that second game. Luke may be a little bit better. I think if he would have made a couple shots, we would have had a different perspective about that, because he had a couple of open looks, and we've seen him make those shots quite a few times in high school. So I wouldn't have been surprised if they fell. But yeah, I think they're going to keep on getting better. And there's one really, really good one and three guys that are going to keep developing.
So the Arizona game, which I was trying to transition.
I want to talk about the freshmen real quick.
It's fine. They're exciting. Everyone wants to hear about the freshmen, so that's not going to lose any engagement. Go ahead, Vinay.
A big personnel change we'll have before the Arizona game. Scott Wilkie will be back.
Oh.
That's good to know. I like
or the Washington State game. Sorry.
Breaking news from Vinay.
No, it's not breaking news. It's
okay, good. Good. I kind of missed hearing Scott. I was listening to Mark in my ears the first two games. God, he's so good.
Yeah, he is.
Hats off to Mark, by the way, driving to Manhattan and then driving back to Boulder overnight to call two games. Like, that's some Jake Shapiro, like, crazy shit. Like, I thought I was the only play-by-play guy that would do that crazy shit because I, like, just don't get paid and I get passionate about these sorts of things. So I got to hustle and prove it. Mark's at the top of the game just doing this shit.
He's been doing this for 30 years and he's driving overnight.
He ain't got nothing to prove. Like, God damn it. Like, that's my guy. Like, he's one of the biggest mentors for all three of us. Like,
Yeah.
You know, Mark's been nothing but good to all three of us, but you know, like I love seeing that from my guy. Like, that's my leader right there. Like, that's when McKinley does some extra stuff at practice.
Yeah,
and he was all the way at the top. He was on the concourse in Manhattan calling the game by himself.
And it's not like he gets to talk to anyone either because he
No.
can't interact with the football or basketball because he's one of the only people, you know, interacting with both. So he's got to be like very quarantined. But yeah, hell yeah, Mark. But yeah,
Scott Wilkie.
Scott Wilkie.
Scott did not make the trip.
So no one went to Arizona on Wednesday. That game gets rescheduled for December 28th, which is going to come right before the USC and UCLA trip. As well as right after the Vegas trip, which right now is Grand Canyon in Washington. But given what we've seen in college basketball, with the Buffs being in Vegas for a few days, I would not be surprised if the Buffaloes end up picking up a game or two, the way things have gone. And Chase, you tell me, because I know you've been sitting on your couch watching college basketball nonstop. Some of these games are coming together 1 o'clock in the morning, the night of. Some of these games are coming together 48 hours in advance, and they're like two top 10 teams going at it. Like, this is ridiculous. And it's fun. Like, I'll like check my phone every day and I'm like, oh shit, like the number 10 team's playing the number 3 team. And then I'll like Google, when did this game come together? Oh, it came together yesterday.
Yeah. The other night you had West Virginia playing Gonzaga, which was a top 10 matchup, a really, really good game. And Mark Few said after the game that Bob Huggins texted him and they figured that game out in about 15 minutes. And they played it in Connecticut. They have Bubbleville going on up there, Mohegan Sun. And some teams are just flying in over there and starting to schedule games. Arizona State did it last week. They just flew to Connecticut and said, we're going to find some games. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they do a little Bubbleville in Vegas and hopefully schedule a couple more. I know they added Mines, but I'm sure they want to add an actual D1 program or a really good team. I'd love to see CU play one of those top 25 teams if they can schedule those.
How long after CSU got canceled do you think it took to get Mines scheduled? Probably 5 minutes.
It was probably 3 text messages. Max.
Yeah.
I
mean, people make such a big deal. Football, they schedule these games 10 years in advance. Yet you could schedule CU San Diego State in one day.
I love what Mark Few, I believe, had to say on Scott Van Pelt the other night, where he was just like, we have no NBA to compete with. All these top 10 games are amazing for college basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're just putting college basketball on this stage. You know, all the coaches are excited. We get this for our players. And I think Few went on to say something along the lines of like, we had Spokane. We were going to be at home basically for the first 2 rounds with a great team. And all our kids got that ripped away from us. I'm going to play as many big games as I can this year. And I would love to have the Buffaloes, you know, just schedule 1 or 2 more games, you know, if they get out to Vegas early or stay late. The problem is that Arizona game is looming, and I know Tad's not going to want to go into that game just a little banged up or anything like that. So especially with Arizona preceding USC and UCLA on the road within a few days. So that's going to be a ridiculous week of Buffs basketball. Mine should be a fun one. I love it when the Buffs play in-state competition. Obviously, it should be a win, but it's really good for Mines. And one of my favorite things about Tad Boyle, like there's, you know, it's a litany of things. The list is as long as the city of Denver is high. Like, it's so long. But one of my favorite things about Tad Boyle is he will do absolutely anything to grow programs in Colorado that may one day even compete with him. You know, whether it's Western State or Mines or Northern Colorado or, you know, Metro State, he wants to do whatever he can as long as it doesn't really impact the Buffaloes. Hey, get them on the schedule, get them up to Boulder. Can we play some sort of MTE, multi-tournament event with these Colorado schools? Stuff like that. That is so good for the health of basketball in the state. And Tad is so conscious of how everything the biggest college basketball program does in the state impacts the rest of the basketball in the state. And I love that about Tad Boyle. And it's something that I don't think a lot of coaches, especially, just passing through in colleges have. And that to me is always why I never thought Tad would leave for Kansas or anything like that, because he's so in on the ground level of basketball in Colorado.
And the one thing he loves about the School of Mines, I think he really likes playing them because he says that they're a well-coached team. He loves their coach. He loves their players. He loves their program. And I don't think it's a bad test for Colorado to play against them, especially with such a young team.
I know Vinay loves his engineers, so I'm not even sure who he's going to be rooting for.
Where did I end up going?
That's right. Well, you're an aerospace guy. If you're an aerospace guy, don't choose Mines over Colorado. That's probably a pretty poor decision. But if you're in any other engineering, I think.
Honestly, though, I hadn't even heard of Mines before college, just because
Well, yeah, you're
Virginia, yeah.
But all of my smart friends ended up at least looking at Mines, and a few of them went to Mines. It's a very good school and obviously very good players. And I love Jake's point about just playing these Colorado teams. There's not many coaches that are willing to schedule as many as even Tad put on the schedule this year, that they'll play UNC as well. Obviously, they wanted to play CSU. I know they're in talks with DU. That didn't work out because DU's been dealing with some of their own COVID problems. But keep playing local. There are coaches at big-time programs that are scared to play local because they know that they're going to play pretty pissed off. And I know Tad's a little bit scared to play local because he knows that he shunned a lot of these kids during recruiting, but he's not afraid.
Yeah, and one of the things that was funny to me is, when he was talking about Rodney and Rodney going to DU, he's like, I don't want to coach against Rodney. I love Rodney. He's an important part of my life. But if Rodney needs to come play us in Boulder for his program, we'll do it. It's gonna hurt me, but we'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was funny when they scheduled DU a couple of years back, and that was the case. Let's look at CU's next opponent, which is going to be tomorrow. It's going to be the first CU game I've seen in person this year. I'll be up in Boulder for BuffStampede. And so I've covered, 3 Rapids home games, I want to say, this summer. So besides that, that would be the first sporting event I've been to since the last time they played Washington State, which was in Vegas, with Chase, which is that Washington State game is going to be the Oregon State game of the Oregon State football 2017 Mike McIntyre, y'all just got me fired game of the basketball team. It was just such a disaster that I don't think I'm ever going to be able to get it out of my mind and out of my breath if I'm talking about CU hoops for an hour. But this is the first time they're playing Washington State since that event. Washington State brings back a lot of guys, I think, right? They've got a couple guys that they've brought back, but not their top guys. Their coach there, I seem to like a lot. I haven't checked in on them yet. This game kind of snuck up on me because I didn't think it was going to happen, but it is happening. We have no idea who's going to be active for the Buffs. I also don't know if the Buffs in the Pac-12 are following the 10-day quarantine that the CDC just instituted instead of the 14-day quarantine that was priorly instituted. So I have no idea who's going to be playing basketball tomorrow, but I am going to be there. So that'll be fun.
Well,
they'll be wearing black and gold, and they'll be wearing red and silver. So there you go. Go ahead, guys.
There's a name that Denver basketball fans might remember, right? On the or not on the.
Well, basketball fans, there's DJ Rodman.
DJ Rodman, yeah.
Right.
But yeah, I think
pretty good though.
Yeah. There used to be a name, he graduated last year, but they had an Overland kid on their roster last year from Overland High School, a Denver kid. This roster, I'm taking a look at it right now. There are definitely some names that I recognize, like Isaac Boughton, who I think is their best player right now. who's playing the best.
What's up with Washington State athletics recruiting Colorado? Like, what is that? Like, they're doing that in football too.
Yeah, they do a really good job recruiting Colorado football. I'm not exactly sure. In that case, at least, I think he was a JUCO transfer, so it wasn't direct.
They have the running back.
Yeah, no, football, they're in the state. They're recruiting the hell out of the state. But with the basketball team, I know at least for that case, he was a JUCO guy. But yeah, it's kind of a similar. Guys from Colorado aren't scared to go to Pullman because of the weather. Like, you're going to get shit weather in Pullman, but it can't be. You're used to the snow and all of that, so maybe that has a reason. It's tough for Washington State to recruit like California kids and stuff like that. At least Southern California kids. So this team is a really good defensive team. I think they're ranked pretty highly on KenPom in defense. They've gave up 52 to Texas Southern, who's probably the favorite to win the SWAC. And they gave up 55 to Oregon State the other night. That game was 59-55. I believe Oregon State was the favorite. So they played really well in that one. I think we kind of know what to expect because we saw them shut down this CU team just a few months ago. And it's mostly the same guys that they're obviously missing. Ellaby, who ended up in the NBA draft, and they added a couple more guys. But I don't know. This should be a team that CU should be able to handle. But it'll be an interesting offensive test for CU because of how good Washington State has been playing defensively.
You think Tad will get these guys fired up after what happened in the Pac-12 tournament?
Yeah, the good thing is a lot of the guys that were on that team are back on that CU team are back on the team now. They remember. It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, McKinley's going to come back with it. McKinley's going to come back with his balls on fire for this game, I think, because they remember that game too. Kyle Smith has this team 3-0, like you said, Chase. They just beat Oregon State 59-55 on Wednesday. So they actually played their Pac-12 opener, unlike the Buffaloes. That game was in Pullman. And Oregon State isn't that great, but they did beat a Pac-12 opponent, and then they barely snuck out against Eastern Washington in Pullman, and they beat Texas Southern barely in Pullman. So they're winning a lot of close games. This is their first road game for Kyle Smith and his team. As you said, Chase, they're a top 100 defensive team in the country by KenPom, and they're someone the Buffs should be able to handle, especially at home. I haven't seen the line on this game, and I'm sure the line's going to look really weird because we don't know who's playing in the game. But if everything was normal, I would say the Buffs are probably -7 or -8 in this game. Like, this is a game the Buffaloes should win. Out of their conference home schedule, this probably is one of the easiest games. So, but that being said, every year the Buffs seem to have one slip up at home. Hopefully it's not the home opener. And generally the home opener, the Buffaloes have come really, really well. And I think not only the fact that it's Washington State, but the way the messaging has been internally, where it's, nothing's a given, take nothing for granted this season. And the Buffaloes just lost one game at Arizona, and they're going to be without somebody tomorrow because of COVID issues. And they were without people in Manhattan. I think that the Buffs aren't going to be overlooking this game in any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, if you go off of KenPom, it's their easiest conference game, period, home or away, just off of their percentage chance of winning. KenPom has CU winning that game by 11. KenPom tends to be pretty close to the line, so I'd guess that spread's going to be around 10 or so. So if CU plays really well, they win it by double digits. If they play okay, they win it by single digits. And if they play really bad, I think that's how they lose this game.
And by my math, Deshaun Schwartz won't be back, right, for Sunday?
By my math, either.
Yeah. I don't want to say that because I don't know as the reporter, but they've been really snug about who is and who isn't. But the math on it indicates that he would not be back. Yeah. The math on it also indicates that Bartholomew or De Silva, as long as they didn't test positive, would be back. But I'm assuming one of them tested positive, and that caused the Arizona cancellation. I don't know these things.
Yeah, those are good assumptions based off of what has been publicly available.
Right. I just really don't like to do that as a reporter, but it's just, we're living in 2020. We're all working on this together.
This is all speculation.
This is all speculation. Everything in 2020 is speculation. Yeah, that's kind of all I got on the basketball team as of now. I do want to check in again soon. Colorado basketball roster schedule. Sorry, I'm Googling right now because they have another game coming up here soon, which is going to be the 8th. So on Tuesday, they're taking on Mines, and then they've got a couple games off ahead of Northern Colorado. So we're either going to talk to you right before that Mines game or right after it. And the Buffaloes should be 4-0 at that point after that Mines game. Do you guys have anything to add about anything you've seen with the Buffs or anything you've seen across the country or how this COVID stuff has played out? Because again, it's been an absolute whirlwind. And I'm just happy that as of now, I am getting in my car and driving from Denver to Boulder to watch the Buffs play. That'll be the first time I've done that ever, by the way. So I'm really glad there's not fans because I lived in Boulder until this year.
Yeah, especially, I don't know what the weather's like, but especially when the weather's bad, that can be a terrible drive.
Oh, it's 70 degrees. It's going to be 60 degrees tomorrow, Chase. I got my car washed yesterday. It's going to be beautiful.
Well, I would like to see Tad call Mark Few and see if we can schedule a game. That would be a ton of fun. But do you want me to touch on maybe the Pac-12 in general, just because I have been watching?
Yeah, go ahead. What have you seen? Yeah.
So I think the Pac-12 doesn't have a top team this year. There's not a team that I'm completely sold on as a really, really good team, a surefire favorite to win the conference. I thought it might be UCLA. Obviously, they haven't gotten off to a great start. ASU has not looked good in I think any other game so far. They played okay against Villanova. Obviously, Remy Martin was completely non-existent in that game, which kind of just leads me to believe that if he can't show up in big games, then I don't know if I can trust that team to make a deep run. Oregon looked terrible the other night. They lost to Missouri, and it wasn't really close.
I saw Oregon against Missouri in a neutral site -4, and I'm like, that is easy money.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't bet on it, but they I mean, forget covering. Mizzou was -4. They wouldn't have cut. Like, that was a disaster for Oregon. I mean, I've never been a big Dana Altman guy. No one associated with Colorado's program is. But I mean, like, I just don't understand how you have that level of recruiting and you suck that bad. But I guess Andy Enfield at USC is also doing that because that's another team I think you were going to hint on. They don't look good either.
Yeah. So to touch on Oregon real quick, they have a bunch of tall, lanky dudes, athletic dudes. They kind of look like Kentucky, where they have a bunch of lanky dudes that don't really understand how to play defense. Kentucky plays better defense. And they can't shoot the ball at all. I know Will Richardson has been out. I think he's out for the next 3-4 weeks. So that's obviously going to help Oregon shooting when he comes back. But that roster right now, there's nobody that you can trust to score the basketball.
The transfer from Rutgers looks pretty good.
Yeah. He did look. He started scoring late in that game because they did pull a little bit of a comeback in that game, but it was so insurmountable that they couldn't completely pull it off. It just looked like they're not good at all defensively. They gave up 80-something points. It was already 40-something in the first half. And when you have that type of athleticism on your team, to me, it's kind of unacceptable because that should be a really good defensive team. And then to touch on USC real fast, they looked really good against BYU. They shot the ball really well, absolutely dominated BYU for that entire game. But the other few games that they've played, they haven't looked good at all. They lost last night, and they almost lost to Cal Baptist. They ended up pulling that one out in overtime. So they haven't looked very good. They're just not a team. I mean, we could keep on going down the list. That just there hasn't been a team that has stood out. We haven't really gotten to see Arizona. They've played one game against a bad competition. So I know nothing about Arizona because they have.
They play Eastern Washington tomorrow. They play Northern Arizona on Monday. They're at California State Bakersfield on Wednesday, or at home against them. They have New Mexico State, then California Baptist. We're not going to know anything until they play Stanford on the 19th. Stanford actually looks pretty solid. Yeah. Their defenses looked really good. But we're not going to know anything about Arizona until the 19th. Stanford looks really solid, I should say, but I don't think they're going to win the conference. They look good, but I mean, good for Stanford, not good for, the conference.
Yeah, they looked really good in their first game in Asheville in the Maui Invitational, and then they kind of looked just okay in the next couple. They have that freshman, Zaire Williams, who has looked okay. He looked really good in the opener when they were playing really good. He looks like he can shoot the ball. But other than that, I don't know. We'll see. They're a good defensive team, so they're always scary, but they don't look like a team that's going to run away with Pac-12 by any means.
Well, the good news is Asheville's tourism scene is picking up, which is good news for the Colorado Rockies because the Asheville tourists are part of the Colorado Rockies farm system. And so the Maui Invitational being in Asheville, it might seem weird, but Asheville's actually a really popular travel destination. It's actually on my list.
Great town. I've been. Sweet town.
Yeah. It's the Boulder of the Appalachians is what I've heard. Anyway, that's Chase Howell.
Which means Bill Walton loves it, and he called most of those games, and it was pretty funny to hear.
I got my dead hoodie on, man. Let's go. Let's get rolling. Me and Jerry. That's Chase Howell. Vinay Simlot has also joined us, so thank you to the both of them. I am Jake Shapiro. Catch all of our content on BuffStampede. You can catch these guys recapping the Arizona football game after that happens on Saturday.
Before. We'll see you on Facebook Live.
Wait, what time's that game?
It's at 5 p.m. Mountain.
5 p.m.
God damn it! So I'm gonna miss it while I'm coming back from the back. Okay, so
no
one's gonna. No one. Well, that's what I did. That's what I did last Saturday because I was coming back from the Cherry Creek football game. By the way, just because this is the podcast for nerds that nerd out about Colorado athletics. The best football game in the state's taking place Saturday. Cherry Creek Valor. I've been watching these two teams all year because I've been covering high school football. It's going to be so good. There's 44 starters on both teams, but there's really only about 32, 33 because, a lot of guys play both ways. Out of those 33-ish guys, probably 25 of them are D1 guys. Like, this is a college all-star game. This is going to be ridiculous. So I don't know how you're going to be able to watch this game. It's happening in Pueblo. But Valor Cherry Creek on Saturday is going to be better than Colorado, Arizona. It's going to be so fun to watch. So make sure you check
Colorado
that out.
High school football. I don't know if high school football has been in a better spot than it is right now.
I'm not even kidding you. Cherry Creek looked better on Saturday than the Broncos did Sunday. I'm not it's not like I'm swear to God, that's I watched both of those teams play. And that was the situation. And I'll throw this little nugget in because only 20 people are going to listen to this, and this is the correct 20 people. I had a source from the Broncos. I was at the Valor or the Cherry Creek game on Saturday, finding out about all the Broncos quarterback stuff before it hit the wire. And my buddy who works over there texted me a video of Phil Lindsay taking snaps in practice and his cadence, and that's why I sent that tweet. But you've never seen anything funnier than Phil Lindsay being told to do a silent count and then Phil Lindsay not doing a silent count and everyone laughing. It was unbelievably great. So all that stuff out of the way. But yeah, these guys will have you covered on the Colorado-Arizona football game. Adam will have you covered writing-wise. No one's going to be reading my basketball recap, but if you do, thank you so much. You're paying my bills. And we will see you very soon on the BuffStampede Basketball Podcast.
Yes, Chase. Before we wrap up this podcast, I know Vinay, have you been keeping an eye on that team? They look like they're playing pretty good basketball right now.
They demolished Air Force on Saturday. I don't know who they're playing next, but it wasn't even close.
They're playing pretty good basketball, and ESPN had them, I think, just on the bubble for the tournament right now. So
on the verge.
Hey, J.R. Payton might have a tournament.
I hear this every year. I've got to see it.
I'm ready. I'm driving the hype train. Let's go.
Let's go. All right. Hype train, Colorado Buffaloes. Things are going well when the basketball team's undefeated, the football team's undefeated. We're hyping up women's basketball. It's nonstop Hypeville in Boulder, Colorado, but none of us can go to the games. So bummer. But eventually the restaurants and bars will open back up. So we will see you all en masse outside on the patio at Blake Street to watch our Buffaloes do their shit. So let's go. We will talk to you very soon. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you and catch all of our content on BuffStampede.com. Thank you.
Positive, test negative.